Hello, everyone. This is Tammy Gustafson, and I am so glad to join or to be together on this kickoff or on the closing call. And so let's go ahead and dive in as everyone is joining. And first of all, I just want to say what a powerful week this has been. Like, it has been such an honor to walk with you guys over this last week. And I am so grateful and honored that you have allowed myself and the other speakers to come into your heart, to your home, to your mind over this past 5 days. I mean, it truly is an honor. And so, first of all, weren't the speakers amazing? Like, oh my gosh, I am so thankful for them. So, if you guys love the speakers, can you give some love in the chat? I'm not sure if any of the speakers are alive right now, but would just love to give some love to the speakers in the chat because, gosh, I really enjoyed interviewing them. I had a good time with that. So, wanted to let you guys know for this closing call, we're going to do 4 things today. First of all, I want to do some logistics because I've gotten a lot of questions and you might have the same questions. And so I just want to cover some of those. Secondly, we're going to do our main focus of today is about figuring out your next step. Very important, especially after a big conference and a lot of information coming at you. Third, I'm going to tell you about another opportunity. And then fourth, we're going to have a Q&A time. So I do have, if you have a burning question, you can put it in the chat, but I'm going to give you a heads up. I've got a lot of emails. So I do have a bunch that I'm going to cover, and then we'll just see how far we get. So first of all, logistics. Guys, the speakers, if you are at a place where you're like, man, I want to connect with these guys. I've sent those out, their contact information and the freebies in the emails. Next week, though, I am going to touch base with you guys a couple times next week because I don't want it to feel like you were suddenly off a cliff and all by yourself again, because this can be a very lonely place. So I'm going to be connecting with you guys a few times next week. And in one of those emails, it's going to have the full list of all the speakers, the contact information. The freebies are still available. So if you want to hop on there and get them, there's some great freebies in there. So I hope that you check those out. So that, and then also the all access pass. I've gotten a lot of questions coming in lately as far as like, how much longer can I buy the all access pass? It is going to be up for a few more days. Okay. So if you are on the fence, or if you're like, well, I wasn't sure that I was going to get it. I wasn't sure, if I was going to like the speakers or whatnot, but now I know I really do want to come back. I want this to be a resource. And in addition, guys, I don't know if we've talked a little bit about it, but the interview with the polygrapher, if you're at a place where you're wondering if your husband has told you the truth and if you need a polygraph, the interview with the polygrapher was very interesting. I would highly recommend that. The interview with a financial advisor. Now, these are ones that were not a part of the regular conference, but they're just in the all access pass. The financial advisor, who he specializes in helping walk women through divorce and their finances. So he had a lot of really great stuff to say. We did a panel discussion with, I think, 5 of the other speakers and myself about the question of should I stay or should I go? And that's a question that just about every single woman who goes through this has asked herself and has thought about. So again, there's no answers in there because we are not in a place of giving answers. This is your life, but just some thoughts and some things to think about for that question. There's also a webinar replay in there that I did about sex after betrayal. So if you are struggling with re-engaging in sex or knowing if it's healthy, or knowing like, hey, we have some problems, I'm not sure what's going on here, Or another big one is, how do I deal with triggers during sex? Everybody has triggers during sex. And so I cover all that in that webinar. So those, in addition to the presentations, in addition to a lot of bonuses from the speakers, are all in the All Access Pass. So we're going to drop that link in the chat again if you are interested in picking that up, so that you have that. Again, it'll be available through probably Tuesday night, and then it'll be going down after that. So the other thing I wanted to let you know about is the Facebook group. Man, this has been a powerful, dynamic Facebook group. I am just so amazed how you guys really leaned in and commented in there. And man, I loved reading the comments and the questions and the community. Beautiful. Oh my gosh, beautiful. So the Facebook community is a pop-up Facebook group, meaning it's specifically for this conference. So it will be open and we can answer any questions that you have, again, through Tuesday. And then the Facebook group is going to be inactive. But here is an exciting piece. So the Betrayal Healing Conference for 2022 is going to wrap up. The Facebook group for the conference is going to wrap up. But next year, we will be back, okay? This is going to be an annual conference. And I'm going to do it in the spring of every year. So April 10th through the 14th of 2023, we will be back for the second annual Betrayal Healing Conference. So the Facebook group will also be back then. So guys, I so want you to come back. I want you to come back. It's going to be another powerful event. I already have the first 2 speakers locked in, and you're not going to want to miss them. So during the emails that I send out next week, one of the things I will have available in there is I will have a link where if you want to wait list for the 2023 Betrayal Healing Conference, then you can do that so that it's on the radar. When we have details, they'll be automatically sent out into your inbox. And then we can spread the word and come back again and come together and join again for another really powerful week of healing. So I'm so excited about that. So the second thing that I want to do, and this is kind of one of the big meats that I want to dive into for our time together today, is I want to help guide you in your next step. Because here's the deal. These conferences, I love these conferences. I have loved spending this week with you. It has been so great. And I've loved the time with the speakers. There has been so much great stuff. There's been so much great stuff. And sometimes when we go to a conference or we go to a retreat, whether it's in person or online, we take in all this stuff and it's impactful in the moment, but then sometimes it just kind of, we just kind of slide out and we go back into life and we forget and we lose some of those things, okay? So we're gonna do an exercise together to help solidify this. So what I wanna do is that we're going to take 90 seconds. I'll tell you when it starts. We're going to take 90 seconds, so not long, but I want you right now to grab a sheet of paper, grab your journal, or grab your phone and just do the note section, whatever. And what I want you to do is I just want you to do kind of a rapid, these are the top of the mind things right now that I'm taking away from the conference. And it might be aha moments. It might be something, a phrase one of the speakers said. It might be a question you had. It might be somebody that you really want to connect with, or you want to make sure you grab their freebie, or whatever that is, or like, hey, this is something that I need to implement in my life or in my marriage. So I don't want you to overthink this, but I just want you to take 90 seconds and just kind of boom, boom, boom. These are the ones that I'm thinking through, okay? So you have your paper or your phone? All right, I'm setting my timer. You have 90 seconds. Don't overthink it. Make a list. Ready, go. 30 seconds. Okay. Okay, so now what I want you to do, finish up your last thought. Okay. And what I want you to do is I want you to look over that list. The list of the aha, the takeaways, the things you want to do, people you want to connect with. Okay. Now I want you to pick your top three. Your top three that you are going to do over the next week. Okay. Or start on. Some of these might take time, and that's okay, but start on. So I want you to pick the top three. And over the next 7 days between now and next Friday, these are the ones that you want to start taking action on. Okay. Give you a second, look over your list. Okay. Now, of those three, I want you to pick one that you are going to take action on today or this weekend, preferably today. Okay. And if you're willing to share, I'd love for you to drop in the chat because this is your next step. Okay. So I'd love for you to drop in the chat if you want to share, what is your next step? Because when we started this conference, as I designed this conference, the three takeaways was to connect you with some safe, really awesome speakers who are going to help you get off the emotional roller coaster. Not meaning you're not going to have emotions. We are validating the heck out of your emotions, right? But that you will not feel like you're alone in it or that they are bad, but you are able to start to feel like you have a foundation and you have your feet underneath you. The second one was to gain confidence. And I hope that's happened. I hope that this week you have felt empowered. And then the third one was to figure out your next step. And so that's what this exercise was about. Okay. So I'm starting to see a few come through in the chats. Love it. Good job, guys. Man, I love it. Okay. So one thing I want to share, one of the things I mentioned, or one of the things that was mentioned was a group. And ladies, I want to highly encourage that in consideration. Oh, I just saw another one come through. I want to join a support group. Awesome. Okay. If you need some recommendations, you guys can reach out. Okay. So I think I mentioned in the kickoff call, but I want to say this again. The group, I still meet with my group. Okay. It's not the same. It's that we're not in crisis anymore. We actually don't even really talk about our husbands. There's 4 of us, and some are still married and some are not. But every other week for the past almost 8 years, we have gotten on the phone and talked with each other. And it's so powerful. But I used to also lead support groups, and I'm going to be doing that again soon. But I used to lead support groups. And when I was getting dressed this morning, I grabbed this necklace to put on. And this necklace was actually a gift that one of the group members gave to everybody in the group, including myself. And it's keys, if you can see that. And everybody got to choose kind of the saying that was engraved on the keys. And so this is the one I picked. It was, I am brave. And that was the message that I wanted to remind myself about, and that I want to remind you guys about today. If I could, man, I would reach through the screen and give you all a necklace set of this with I am brave, or I am beautiful, or I am worthy on this. Because the reality is, this journey is so hard. It's so hard. And I wish in the very core of my being that this conference never had to take place, that this was never even something that happened to any of us. Um, but we are all in this together. And I want to remind you that you are brave. Even those days that you don't feel it, the very fact that you are getting up, that you are coming, that you signed on to this conference, that you open those emails that have Betrayal Healing Conference on it, I know that's an issue. I know that's a deal when you see that in your inbox going, man, I wish I didn't have to open that one, right? But I want to let you know that you are brave. And so I do hope that you find a group as well. So, okay. So something I want to invite you guys all into, or offer this as an opportunity as you guys take your next step and as you look forward for help and for healing. Okay. So the Betrayal Healing Conference of 2022 is wrapping up, but the Betrayal Healing Academy is opening. Okay. And this is something that I am launching right now, and y'all are the very first ones to hear about it. And so what I'm doing is I am offering a course, well, 3 courses actually. And this academy is again designed for women going through betrayal. And it is 3 courses that are going to help set the foundation and help move you through not just the foundation like you just found out about it, but there are women who have been in recovery for a long period of time who still feel like, man, I don't know what to do, or I feel stuck, or I just feel like I'm not quite sure what's next, or I need support, or I need a group around me. And so that is why I designed this, is so you could step into this. And there's 3 courses to pick from, and they're going to be one a month. Okay. So the first one is to get unstuck. The second one is to set healthy boundaries. And the third one is to overcome triggers. Because the getting stuck, as a coach and a licensed professional counselor, this is one of the areas that I really specialize in within the betrayal healing community and healing, is being able to quickly assess where women are stuck and how to get them unstuck and get moving. Because there are 100 ways for us to get stuck on this healing journey. And you probably know what I mean, because I think we have all felt this at times where you're like, man, I feel like I'm spinning my wheels and I'm taking in all this information, but I still don't feel like I'm getting any traction. And I don't know why. I don't understand. Like, I feel like I've been here for forever. So the first course of this academy, which is going to be in January, they're 4 weeks long, is all about that getting unstuck and filling in any holes that may be there in that healing process for you, so that you have a foundation so that you can move forward. Okay. The second course is on boundaries, because in order to heal, there has to be safety. And to have safety, you have to have boundaries. Okay. So it is a vital part of this healing process. And then the question I get immediately is, well, I don't know. How do I set boundaries? How do I know what boundaries need to be set? Right. And because if you're like me, maybe you grew up in a community or where you were never taught about boundaries, or you were taught that they were bad, or that they were mean, or that they were punishing, or maybe you weren't told any of that, but you didn't know how. Like, that is something none of us are taught, is how to set boundaries, how to know what to do. So we're going to walk through that in a very practical way. So you're going to know exactly what your next step is, knowing how to connect with yourself to know what you want, what you need, knowing how to voice that in a way that comes across clearly. And so that's the second one, which will help set up that safety. And then the third course, and this one is going to be, Get Unstuck is January. Boundaries, Set Healthy Boundaries is February. And then March, it's going to be on overcoming triggers. Because, man, triggers, a client once said this, and I will forever remember it. She said, triggers can bring you to your knees. They can bring you to your knees, where it feels like all of the work and all the progress you have done feels like it's suddenly gone and washed away. And there's a lot of shame, there's a lot of blame, that either internal or external, about triggers. And so realizing, like, no, understanding triggers, not anything you're doing wrong, and some practical ways to work through them and where they can actually be a stepping stone to your healing. So, all that to say, the Betrayal Healing Academy is now open. And Amy is going to drop that link in the chat if that's something that would be helpful for you moving forward. So I want you to know that that is available. And I would love to stay connected with you in this process. So it will be in the chat. I'm also verbally going to let you know it is betrayalhealingconference.com/betrayal healing academy. So check it out. Let me know if you have any questions. Okay, so our fourth and final part of this call today is we are going to go into a Q&A time. And so a lot of people have sent questions over via the email. So I am going to answer some of those. And then if any others come up, then if I have time, we'll do that as well. Oh, it also saw something in the chat. So the Betrayal Healing Academy, that information will also go out next week. And you'll be getting emails next week, maybe tonight, for a little bit. So you can check into that. But I will send that out through email as well. So feel free to reach out. Okay, so let's do some Q&A time. So I am going to answer these. I am going to answer these as I see, as kind of from my point of view. So if any questions come up or whatnot, just let me know. Okay, so let's start. This first one I thought was so great. What is an appropriate way to share recovery resources with my spouse? One of the takeaways from this week is that we can't dictate or control our spouse or his recovery. So I don't want to be pushy, but I also know he isn't aware that there's relevant resources to help men with this, and I really want to share. I am so glad that you brought this up, because I think sometimes there's this very fine line that gets a little, muddy, where we say on one hand, you don't want to control your husband's recovery, you know, what you can't control what he's going to do, you know, you don't want to drive the ship. And so all that is good and true. But then the takeaway sometimes can be, well, then that means I just have to be silent. Then I'm not supposed to use my voice, or I'm not supposed to share. So here's where I land with that. Absolutely. If there are things that you want to share, share. Okay. I will always err on the side of a wife using her voice. Okay. And so another question to ask yourself to kind of help decide whether or not you're going to, what you want to share or not, is what do you need to feel safe? Okay. This is a question, man, tuck that away. Anytime you have a question of should I do this or should I not, this is a question to come back to, is what do I need to feel safe? Okay. And we're talking emotionally, we're talking physically, relationally, sexually, financially, could be anything. Okay. So it's a broad range of what I need to feel safe. And if you feel like, hey, what I need, what I want and what I need and what would help me feel safe is if, one, he knew about this, okay? And two, if he did this, okay? So if that is something where you're like, yes, it's burning inside of me, I want to tell him about this, great, do it. Do it. There's nothing you can do to shut this down. There's nothing you can do wrong. You will not mess up his healing process if you offer a resource or two, or even if you are driving his healing, if that's a drive inside of you. Like, is that best for you? It's probably not healthiest for you, but if you overdrive, right? But you're not going to mess it up. Like, whether or not he's going to recover is going to be based on whether or not he chooses to do the work or not. So if you have something that you want to share with him, go ahead and share it, okay? And it's up to him. Know that at that point in time, your hand's kind of open there, and it's up to him on what he's going to do with it. But I want to empower you to use your voice. And if we're going to err on the side of anything, let's err on the side of you speaking up and using your voice and saying your wants and needs, because they matter. They're important. Okay. Second question, is it ever too late for a disclosure to happen? Is there a time beyond which a disclosure would not be as truthful or as effective due to the distance from the events? So no, there's never a point where it's too late to do a disclosure. Okay. And it's never a matter of less truthful, because he's either going to be true or he's not. And whether he's truthful about something that happened yesterday or truthful about something that happened 50 years ago, he's either going to be truthful or not. So that part, no, it's never too late. And I would say it's actually really common for couples to circle back around to disclosure after a beat or two, meaning a year or 2 or 20 after betrayal. Because nobody prepares you for disclosure, right? Like nobody's like, hey, you're getting married, and here, just in case it doesn't work out how you think it's going to, here's the manual for how to deal with betrayal, right? Nobody tells us that, and we would never believe it if they gave it to us, and that would be depressing to get that. But my point being is that no one knows how to heal. And so I didn't, right? Like you find yourself where your life is shattered and you're like, oh my gosh, like what do I do next? Like, how do I heal through this? Is it possible to heal from it? So this idea, we look back now, and I've talked about my betrayal healing phases, in the quiz that many of you have taken, where it outlines like, hey, here's the process that happens. There's the discovery in the beginning and the hard part, and then the resolution, all of that. But you don't know that when you're going into it. So a lot of people skip the disclosure. Or the disclosure, he didn't really disclose very well, or you didn't know you needed it or wanted it or whatnot. So all that to say, very normal to come back to it. And I would say it is incredibly important in a marriage. If the marriage is going to heal, you have to know the truth. If you're going to forgive, you need to know what you're forgiving, right? You need to know the truth about your life and your story and how to move forward. So absolutely, if you're at that place where you're like, well, we're like 2 years in, or we're 10, or we're 30 years in, right? It doesn't matter. It's still the truth about your story. And he can still absolutely go back and do this. Okay. And I would say get really good help. Boy, Jake's method and his talk about disclosure and using a polygraph, and the Stephen's polygraph stuff, really good stuff. Okay, I'm moving on. I get very passionate. I talk long about these. Another question about disclosure, details. How many details? This person says, I'm not sure I really want to hear all the details. Does that make sense? Or is it important to hear all the details? Great question. Great question. That's my personal opinion. Others will disagree with me, which is totally fine. It's what you want. Okay. You do not need more details than what you want to hear. Okay. Honor yourself in that. That is okay. You don't have to have all the details. He needs to share all the details. Okay. But that can be done with a therapist and a counselor, because that's his journey and his healing journey. Okay. But for your details, some women wanted all the details. I wanted a lot of details, and then I got even more details than perhaps I wanted. There's a part of me that's grateful for that, because I knew the severity. Okay. But once you have the details, you can't unhear the details. And then that becomes something else that you have to process through. So I would really talk with your counselor or coach about that, and really talk about it ahead of time for what's important to you on that. Another thing I saw in the comments, and then also has been another question too, is in regards to disclosure, is when he says, I can't remember. Okay, so I actually saw one of these emails come through last night, and I talked to Nathaniel about it, because I was like, oh, honey, what do you say to this? Because and we're on the same page of like it is hard. It is hard because it is absolutely, oh my gosh, I don't even have words for it. To be a wife and be like, you don't remember, like nothing can send you through a roof. Nothing could send me through a roof faster than that. So here's the balance with this. And this is what Nathaniel and I talked about last night about this as well. There are some details he legitimately may not remember. Okay. Because it was a long time ago, because there was so much going on, because whatever. Okay. There may be some he legitimately cannot remember. I have a hard time with that, but I think it is true. Okay. But here's the deal. He has to try. He has to try hard to remember those details. Because if this is a matter of he doesn't want to remember them, that's a problem. Okay. And really, what you want to look for is what is his attitude towards you when you ask him about this and when he is saying he doesn't remember. Okay. If he is dismissive, if he is angry, if he is, if you know he has not put the time in and really dug deep, then I would be, for me, it would be highly suspect that he can't remember. Okay. On the other hand, if he is really diving in and he is humble and this is breaking him, and he is bringing stuff up when he does remember it, then this might be one of those legitimately he doesn't remember. And there are some things that their memory will be jogged in the future about various things, which can be legit as well. So it's so tricky. This one is so messy. And I think you got to trust your gut. You got to trust your gut with it of whether or not you think he's telling the truth on that he doesn't remember. Okay. This one is about shame. So Connie Spiegel did a talk about shame, and she said not telling someone and the secrecy of that is connected to shame that somewhere deep within you believe that it's your fault. If I gain the understanding and truly believing it is not my fault, will that eliminate the shame, or are there other factors that contribute to the shame as well? That's a really good question. I don't think there's an easy answer for that. I think really believing that it's not your fault is going to help. It's going to help. Are there other factors? There certainly could be. When society gives a lot of shame messages to wives, right? Uh, Saying, happy men don't cheat. You have to meet his needs or he's going to go outside the marriage. Clearly you just didn't have enough sex. It wasn't good enough sex. It was, you name it. I think we've all heard that. And there's a lot of internal messages as well. I think one of the big ones that sometimes shame will linger, even when you know it's not your fault, is in the area of our own insecurities. Okay. Because betrayal shatters. It's like a bomb goes off and it feels like your whole heart is shattered. It also feels so incredibly personal. It's just personal in a way that other forms of addiction, betrayal it's just different, right? So oftentimes what it feels like is that at one, we think it's our fault in the beginning. And then it's like every insecurity we have ever had in life now feels like it's been confirmed and it's on steroids. Okay. So in 5th grade, when that person said that you were chubby or said that, boy, that was a stupid thing to say, and you internalize, I'm chubby and I'm stupid, right? Now all of a sudden it feels like, oh, well, of course he acted out, or of course he did that because I'm chubby and I'm stupid, because back in 5th grade or whatever it says that, okay? So if shame lingers, even you realize that it's not your fault, I would say you need to go back and love on yourself and root out those areas, kind of make a list of those areas of insecurities that you have. um, and root those out. So, ladies, this is something we don't talk a lot about. Didn't get a lot of airtime this week. But the path to healing, ultimately long term, is going to be in the relationship with yourself. Okay, it took me years to figure that out. I'm almost 8 years in, and it's been the past year that I've really figured that out and felt it for myself. But my healing, and this is true whether your marriage makes it or not, whether he's doing good work or not, but ultimately your personal healing is going to be in your relationship with yourself, and it's going to be largely through your body, reconnecting with yourself, because our self includes our body, right? And loving on yourself. So going back and speaking truth to that little girl, speaking care and compassion to that younger version of yourself that got hurt, will help with the shame. Okay. It'll help with the shame and also help with triggers. All right. Moving on. My husband wants to know why watching porn is so bad. I think this is I'm really glad you asked this question, because there can be this, well, porn, at least there's just porn, how is porn? Ladies, porn is betrayal, is betrayal, is betrayal. It is hurtful. It is sexually acting out. Absolutely. First and foremost, it hurts your heart. And if that in my book is the only answer that is needed. Why is it so bad? Because it hurts your heart. And your heart is so worthy and so important. So first and foremost, it's the relational and what it does to you. Okay. And second of all, scientifically, it completely alters his brain. Okay. And there's a lot of research out there that is above my pay grade. That is not something I'm an expert in, but it massively alters his brain. It can alter his ability to have sex. It physiologically, it alters things. It alters things relationally. So I would say he needs to do some research on that. And then if we want to take it a step further, porn is also deeply connected with sex trafficking, with abuse. It is, the list can go on and on and on. Okay. So porn is bad. Porn can be very hurtful. All right. Next question. Who do I tell? Okay. Good question. How do I determine who to disclose to and how to disclose and when? So for that question, you're looking for safe people. And let me tell you, maybe this has been your experience too, but there were people I told that I thought would be safe that weren't. There were other people that I wasn't sure about and they were safe. I lost friends over this. I had friends who just kind of disappeared. I had friendships that were altered. I have friends that I had made through this. And let me tell you, they are amazing women. Oh man, when you have gone through this, there's a depth and an understanding about you that you just flat out don't have if you haven't experienced this. So who to disclose to and when? You make your best, you make the best decision you have with the information you have. Okay. So safe friends who aren't going to break confidence. I think if you get into a support group that is about this, that's a beautiful area of safety because everybody gets it. But dear close friends, and I would say you can start, but you don't have to jump into the deep end. You can give a crumb, okay, and you can see how they respond. And then if they respond well, if they're safe, then great, you can give another one. Okay. Family members, I would say it's just that gets a little bit more tricky. Okay, because with family members, they're going to be around long term and they are going to interact with you guys more. So where I see this kind of backfiring at times is when somebody tells their family about it, and their family, of course, is protective and wants to help and angry and all of that, and then eventually the couple decides to work it out and they get together, and then it's hard sometimes for the family to come around. So, but here's another thing I would say is that it is important to tell. Okay, it is important to tell because the shame does live in that secrecy, like Connie said, and and sometimes it's really hard when you're going to gatherings, family gatherings, and you feel like a fake because you are feeling like you have to put on the show because nobody knows. And so I would say there's that fine line and a balance there. So I would say trust your gut on that and make the best decision you have, and then don't beat yourself up if it doesn't go well. And if it goes great, awesome, yay. But if it doesn't go well or somebody doesn't respond how you thought they would, just know that we've all experienced that. Okay. Same sex. My husband is a sex addict, and his behavior is acting out as included encounters with men. I'm not hearing anybody talk about this in the betrayal recovery work. And can anyone speak to that? Let me just start out by saying you are not alone, and you're not the only one who's reached out about this. And so this is an area that is more common than what it appears. Okay. And I think this area gets so tender, it just hits a different layer that a lot of women don't share this, or it takes deep into a support group or whatnot to share this. And so I think that's why it doesn't get a lot of airtime, is that it is certainly there. I'm glad you said this. It needs more airtime. It needs more airtime because it leaves women who've experienced with their husband, it leaves them feeling really isolated and like they're the only ones. And I want you to know you are not. You are not. The other thing that really surprised me about everything I've learned through this journey, and with my husband doing this work as well as a counselor and the work that he's done, is that it's not uncommon for men to act out with same sex. Sometimes they may be gay, sometimes they are not. It took me a while to wrap my head around this, but it's not actually an indication that they are necessarily attracted to the opposite sex. Sometimes it is a programming from perhaps that they were molested early in life, and that was some of their first sexual experiences, and so it becomes part of their sexual template. Sometimes it's, well, let's just say there is a lot to it. There's a lot to it, and a lot it could mean, whether or not, no matter what their sexual orientation is. Okay, but for a wife to go through this, I want you to know you are not alone. And I'm going to keep that in consideration as far as future conferences, because I think this needs to be spoken out about. Okay, boundaries and non-negotiables. Okay, I have lost myself in walking this road post-disclosure, post-discovery, post-researching myself to death, etc. And I know I won't put myself through it again. I know I will never be willing to walk this road with him again should he relapse. Would putting the boundary out there, saying I won't do this again, would it be driving him to a level of more fear, shame, panic, and potentially more secrecy by making that boundary known in advance? It's an excellent question. So this is, I am a big proponent of having non-negotiables. Okay. There are a lot of women who come into my office and they say that they were told that they can't have a boundary like that. They can't have a non-negotiable like that, because if they do, just what this question says, like it'll drive them, they'll just be more secret and whatnot. That really disempowers a wife, because the reality, let's take his reaction out of this for a moment. It's really important that you know what you want and need. You know, for me, my disclosure here, I have a hard, fast line that's similar to this question of saying, I will not walk through this again. Like, I have done this once. And I told him this in the midst of it, like, I will walk through this with you once, but I won't do it again. Okay. So if there's any acting out, like, you were choosing to end our marriage if you act out. Okay. Um, so that is my line. And that is okay. It's really important that you know where your line is. And it is okay to have a line. You do not, just because he's doing good work, does not mean that that means you have to stay in for forever. Okay. And I think in the addiction world, there's sometimes women get um, sucked into feeling like, well, as long as he's working, I have to keep riding this roller coaster over and over again. As long as afterwards he picks himself up and he leans back in, I can't say that that's the end. Like, I have to just keep going and I have to suck it up and I have to do it again. You don't. Okay. Here's the other thing that I really hate this. I think I've said it at some point in this week, but the area that a lot of times where I see men really kick it into gear when they're on the fence, and this is not the case for everybody, of course, but a lot of time where I've seen consistently where men have kicked it into gear, it's when their wives get to the point where they're like, no more, no more. And when wives know that they will be okay on their own, there is something that often, not always, oftentimes I see a click in men where they get really scared because they're finally taking her seriously and they start kicking it into gear. Okay. That does not mean that you need to do anything. It's not your responsibility. Like, whether or not he's going to recover is on him. Disclaimer, disclaimer, disclaimer. Okay. But what I want you to know is it is okay to set those boundaries. Now, the second part of that question, will it set him into more secrecy and whatnot? If it does, he is not doing good work. Okay. And if you can't make your decisions based on what you think he might or might not do. Okay. That can't be the driving force. Will he keep it more secret? I don't know. Will it motivate him to do work? I don't know. So we can't judge, we can't make those decisions based on what you hope or what you fear out of him. Where you have to go is inside of yourself and saying, hey, this is where I'm at. This is what I want and what I need. And you're putting that into words. What he does with that is going to show you a lot about his character and a lot about his work. So I know none of these questions are easy or black and white, but there we go. Okay. Moving on. Husband's not doing the work. So I do not see good recovery in my husband. Nada. Nothing. Wonder what best steps are for me now. Now that I've come to the end of hoping that he will get it. So any tips for good boundary settings so I can start to move on with my life? And then I added this. This was later, but I added it because I thought it was so beautiful in describing this phase. This person said, it's not the beginning of my journey. It's not the beginning of my journey with this, but it may be the end of my journey with him and the start of the journey with me. And I think that actually answers part of the question, because there is this shift. And one, I'm sorry for the person who wrote this. I'm sorry that he isn't doing good work. You deserved more. You were worthy of him doing work. So it's not a reflection on you. For anyone listening to this whose husband is not doing good work, or that train is already passed and he didn't do good work and you are now divorced, it was not because you were not worthy of it. You were worthy of being fought for. You were worthy of love. It's not a reflection on you that he didn't do the work. Okay. Back to the question though. All right, where you made that shift of like, he's not doing it. He's not doing it. And I am shifting from focusing on that and hoping for that. And now I'm moving on. And I would say in the betrayal healing phases, that is the shift. That's kind of phase 3. And then that's shifting into phase 4. And so I would say for this person, you're moving into phase 4. And phase 4 is all about coming back and focusing. And the eyes are shifting from focusing on the marriage to shifting and focusing on your healing. So, next steps, yeah, boundaries, verbalizing what you need is really good. This is the time to have that healthy detachment, to set those boundaries, whether you stay married or whether you get divorced. That's up to you. But the shifting piece of going now, I would say start with getting a lay of the land. Like, what? It's like surveying the damage after a bomb goes off, right? Where if you think of a movie or whatnot, they walk around and they're just kind of taking it in and surveying the damage. And so it's like that has to happen in our lives as well, where we take a mental and a physical and a social and a financial inventory of where am I at now? How am I at physically? How am I at with my physical health? How am I at? Have I gained a lot of weight? Have I lost a lot of weight? Do I feel comfortable in my own skin? Where am I at financially? Guys, this is such, oh man, it's so expensive. Healing is expensive. Maybe he's used a lot of money too. Like, where are we at financially? Like, where are bank accounts? Do I have access to the bank accounts? What is going on? Relationally, like who is around me? Like, who are my friends in my support system? Who are the people I need to walk away from because they're not safe anymore? But taking a lay of the land to get an idea of where you're at. And then what I recommend is that you start with the one, you pick one, okay? As you're starting to rebuild and starting to put the pieces back together in life and start to dream. And this may take a little bit of time, but start to dream about what you want the rest of your life to look like. Okay? Guys, we all got one life to live. Okay? This was never supposed to be part of our story. It was never the story that we wanted or we intended, but we have one life to live. So, how do you want to spend it? What's the life you want to design moving forward? Okay. So, as you're looking at all these pieces of it, spiritually is another part. Like, for those who come from a faith background, there are very few people, women I've seen go through this process and not have a deep crisis of faith. Okay. To me, not be angry at God. And I want you to know that's okay. He can handle it. You keep moving forward. Okay. Keep struggling through that. Don't give up. So, but anyways, as you start to move forward, you pick that one area of life that you want to focus on. And then you put your time and the energy you have into that until you're on top of it. And then you pick the next one and you move on to that. But being very gracious with yourself that you don't have to put all the pieces back together at once. You don't have to have all the answers. If you're going through a divorce, that may be all of the energy and more that you can possibly muster. So that's okay. If you're not going to the gym, if you're not doing X, Y, or Z at that point in time, that's okay. Okay, give yourself a lot of grace. A lot of grace. All right, last question that we're going to answer for today, or that I'm going to answer for today, just for time wise. Just seeing if there's any more. Okay. Is it possible to heal? That's what I want to end on today. Yes, it is possible to heal. Is it possible for your husband to heal if you're still married? Yeah, it's possible. Is he going to? I don't know. Like, but it's possible. Man, I have seen men who just seem so far gone and then something clicked and they pulled it together and they healed. And then I've seen others that never do. And so I don't know. This is a waiting for him. Will your marriage heal? I'm not sure. But what I can say is that you can heal. With or without your marriage, you can heal. And I want to tell you a little story as we wrap up. So I spent a little time living overseas in college, and And so Paris became a spot that was my happy place. It would where I lived in Geneva, Switzerland, and so I'd go over to Paris on a weekend when I just needed to be by myself. Um, and I needed to reconnect with myself and reconnect with God. I'm an outgoing introvert. So I love people, I love connecting, and then I need my solitude and silence. And so, but then life happened. Life happens. I got married. You don't really go overseas too much. And then life blew up, right? And then I was in crisis mode for a long, long time. And then finally, a couple years ago, it was actually Nathaniel who offered this, but sent me on it. My roommates and I from college were going to go on a trip, and it fell through. And so he said, "Well, hey, I mean, do you want to go back to Paris?" I was like, "Yes, yes, I want to go back to Paris." So several years ago, I instead of getting on a train for a weekend in Paris, I kissed my kids goodbye. We have 4 kids, and said goodbye to my husband and got on a plane all by myself. And I flew to Paris for a week. And I roamed the streets of Paris, and I ate chocolate croissants, and I drank wine, and I walked along the river, and I reconnected with myself. I reconnected with God. And that was soul giving. It was life giving for a couple of reasons. One, um, because it was reclaiming part of me that had been lost. And part of this journey, and as you move forward from this conference, as you take everything you have learned and figure out your next step, part of what we are doing here is we are reclaiming what is lost. And maybe that's not the phase you're in right now. That's okay. But I want to give you hope, and I want to give you an image of that. Okay. And so every year since, Nathaniel had absolutely no idea what he was starting, but every year since I've gotten on a plane and flown over to Paris by myself to reconnect. And I leave a week from Sunday for my one this year. Okay. But a couple of things really hit me is that one, a year or so into doing this on these solo retreats again, Notre Dame burned. And you guys might remember that. It's been several years now, but massive fire. And as I watched Notre Dame burn on the TV, and then subsequently have been back there, it is barricaded. There's scaffolding around it. There's a crane, last time I was there, that is still there, deeply, deeply into working about it. The thing that stuck out to me that was that, you know what, even sacred things burn sometimes. And you and your heart are sacred and valuable and worthy. And sometimes life happens and it burns. We did not plan for this betrayal burn to happen, right? But there is rebuilding. There is rebuilding, and there's hope. And so on the 5-year anniversary of life blowing up, on the day, I scheduled my trip to Paris over that 5-year anniversary because that felt deep. It felt different, that 5-year mark. And so I decided that I was going to schedule a photo shoot of myself in Paris on that day. And I did it not because I felt beautiful. I did it not because I felt even worthy of doing a photo shoot, but it's because sometimes in this journey, well, a lot of times what we do is we wait to do things until we feel worthy of them. Okay. And I want to flip that on its head and say that maybe sometimes we have to do things. And then by the very fact that we are doing them, it is telling ourselves that we are worthy. Okay. So I went and I scheduled a photo shoot. And so I stood in front of the Notre Dame right next to the river, right about twilight. And so all you see is, well, you see me and you see the river. And then in the back, you can see a little bit of Notre Dame, and you can see the little light of a crane up in the air. And to me, that symbolized that we are worthy. And just because things got burned in our lives, just because the very core of our hearts got burned, we are still worthy, we are still standing, and we are rebuilding. And there is hope. And let me tell you, I see beauty again in this world. When I walk around Paris, I see beauty. I feel joy again. I have hobbies. Man, I love indoor skydiving. So much fun. There's fun in my life again. All of that is there for you as well. You can do this and you can heal. It has been such an honor to share this week with you. Thank you for the honor of doing that. We will be in touch, and I hope that you will join me next April for another round for the second annual Betrayal Healing Conference. Take care.